somewhere deep down, you're just terrified. Because you're not sure he's wrong, huh? You think they deserved it, huh? You think they deserved it.
What is up, Bat Family? Welcome back to a brand new The Batman video, and today, well, first and foremost, thank you for clicking on today's video, and we're going to go in for a deep dive in that Joker Arkham deleted scene from The Batman. So this is my full in-depth, kind of shot-by-shot, if you will, hidden details, getting more into that dialogue, but also the Joker's appearance and how he looks this way, given what Matt Reeves has said, and I'm just going to expand upon that myself. But also, we're chucking in some theories here, because there is some very interesting stuff out there, such as a certain paperclip that seems to be missing off the file after Joker gives it back to Batman. Is this deliberate, or perhaps a continuity error? We'll get into that. But also, according to the FX team who handled this Joker look with the makeup artists, they're teasing some secrets within the face, and I think we might know what that is. So strap yourselves in. I can't wait to get into this. So without further ado, just go ahead and like this video, share it around with your friends, that would really help me out, and subscribe here for more content on Marvel, DC, but also further coverage into the Batman sequel, the HBO Max spin-off shows of the Penguin, the Arkham Asylum series, which could pertain to this, you never know, and much, much more. So, of course, we have to start at the very beginning, where the Batman himself enters Arkham Asylum to meet with someone he's met before in order to get help profiling this new serial killer.
Present. Almost our anniversary, isn't it?
There's a serial killer. I want your perspective.
Now, I think it's going to be handy to include something, maybe a lot of you have heard this before, but even if you have, or if you just haven't, it'll be helpful in of itself to kind of refresh your minds with exactly the context and the history that we have going on between these two characters right now, since we know that the Batman, albeit it's not an origin tale, since it picks up in year 2, it refers to his origins, and that's true. Even within this scene, it refers to the origins of both Joker and Batman with their relationship. So Matt Reeves has said that this is a scene in where Batman is so unnerved because the Riddler's writing to him, and he's like, well, why is this guy writing to me? And he figures he's got to profile this killer. And so he goes to see another killer that he's clearly had an experience with in these first 2 years. And this killer in this story is not yet the character that we come to know, right? So everybody's kinda in their infancy. So in the comics, these characters often declare their alter egos in response to the fact that there's a Batman out there. But as the dialogue unfolds with regards to, you know, nearing their first anniversary and things like that, it really starts to show the kind of multifaceted character attributes that this Joker has. And what I mean by that is kind of what I said in yesterday's video, and how it makes up the goofy, the serious, this kind of perverse aspect to him, all from this moment onwards. And this is exactly what we're going to dive into now.
First anniversary is paper. What makes you think I come so cheap?
I thought you'd be curious.
You think I could offer this stuff?
Don't you?
You have pictures.
So clearly here, within the first 2 years, and Matt Reeves has said it's 1 year, 6 months in year 2, Batman has run into Joker before, and that's how he's even here in the first place, right? Within Arkham State Hospital. So he would have captured him sometime in Batman year 1, and him also being a killer is kind of why Bruce said, you know, I thought you'd be curious. And this particularly rings home even more true, if you will, after Barry Keoghan's Joker is kind of like, you know, you think I'd get off on this stuff, and Batman's just like, don't you? Because he kind of knows he's a killer and he would be entertained by this whole scenario, which is why he probably agreed to turn up in the first place, plus also getting in Batman's head, but, you know, I digress. And that's the thing, when he's like, you think I get off on this stuff, don't you? And then it turns into the, you have pictures. It's like question mark, exclamation mark. You know, it's kind of that fascination that he has, and he's kind of looking forward to it as of this moment onwards, to not just like boringly profile someone, but hey, oh man, I get to see the details of what this guy's done. It's that somewhat initial twinkle of perverse side of this Joker that we're already getting in this scene, other than that of the creepy demeanor that he had from the very second that he walked into the Arkham interview room. And this is where he proceeds to look at the files, so he'll have pictures of Mayor Mitchell's death photos with the tape with No More Lies, Pete Savage, the commissioner, and how his face was bitten off by rats or whatever. And there's not really any other way to put it other than this just amuses him in this moment. He's giggling, he's kind of laughing, he likes it. This is just something that really fascinates me overall when we get to this part of the deleted scene, because I don't know if we'll know exactly how or what circumstances it was that Batman, you know, brought Joker into Arkham with. I mean, obviously we get teasers from Reeves and this scene in of itself with Batman saying,
"There's a serial killer. I want your perspective."
I wonder why he wants this person's perspective on a serial killer. Maybe it's because he also did some serial killings. So as a result, you could only imagine technically a movie 0.5 before the Batman 1, or chapter 1 if you will, where it was maybe simply quite another heavy detective-driven story in where Batman had to suss out who this person was that was killing before. Obviously not copy and paste left behind with riddles, but he's put this guy away before 4 killings. There's not really another reason why you would seek this Joker's expertise otherwise. And as Reeves says himself with what we've already mentioned, so he goes to see another killer that he's clearly had an experience with. And so I kind of like to imagine in a way, because of how Reeves also specifically says, here we have a Joker who's not yet the Joker, so he could have kind of been on this identity crisis killing spree, if you will, around about a year ago, because as Barry Keoghan's Joker says, it almost nearing our anniversary. So not quite 1 year on the dot, but like, you know, could be a month, 2 weeks away. So it was that short of a time, and considering Batman's only been Batman, you know, and he's in year 2, if you will, it wasn't that long ago before Batman went on this mysterious killer case, sorry, the Joker, to now the Riddler, which, you know, it makes sense why he's gone to see him, but we'll talk about more why it was cut out of the movie later on in this video. But given the specific context and back to the point of, you know, how this Joker isn't the Joker yet, and what I imagine Joker's original case was with what, you know, ended up putting him into Arkham, was more, since he wasn't the Joker, he probably did have a bit of like a random, like crazy, anarchic, chaotic killing spree. One that definitely probably involved some games, as Joker likes to do. Not necessarily a whole carnival or amusement mall-esque kind of thing, but I bet that he's somewhat played with Batman in the way that Riddler does with his riddles, but not exactly riddles or anything. I'm just saying he probably still did play with him because he probably enjoyed the fact that a masked vigilante was coming after him. It's just that he didn't really find out exactly who or what he is by the end of his killing spree, since, as Reeves said, he's not the Joker, and by the end of it, he was maybe just so messy that he ended up getting caught by Batman. But that's not to say, by the way, that, you know, when he does find himself one day, in terms of how Reeves says, you know, one day will crown himself as Joker, albeit that the characteristics are most certainly there with how I often say Selina doesn't have the moniker of Catwoman in this movie. Penguin is kind of called Penguin, but he doesn't embrace the moniker of Penguin. They all have the characteristics of Catwoman, Penguin, and Joker isn't called Joker, but he is literally, as you can see, Joker. But not quite there yet. He will still very much so one day be threatening. It's just, I imagine that this is in such the infancy in where he first got caught by Batman. He wasn't as meticulous with his own spree that he went on that ended up getting him locked away in Arkham. But when he has the comeback that he teased to Edward and everything like that, man, it's going to be a lot more, I think, as flamboyantly winging it as I think Joker always does, but also probably a bit more calculated. I also like some of the references to their prior history as well, in where he somewhat knows how to get into anyone's head. Now, we did already see that explored in the original Riddler scene already it's like Riddler fell under Joker's charm, you know, where it's like, oh no, you did great, you know, don't be sad and things like that. It was already gassing up the Riddler, so to speak. Well, here he can do it in another way where he can get his hooks into you, and it's somewhat also this whole Hannibal Lecter Silence of the Lambs, you know, tone over the whole interview and the consultation aspect of it all. And as Barry Keoghan says in this particular moment in this scene,
maybe he's a fan of yours? Any theories?
Not yet.
Really? You're normally so ahead of the curve.
you know, just that whole, any theories? He's like, not yet. And he's like, really? You're normally so ahead of the curve. And he's kind of like giggling amongst himself after that, because it's like he's casting his mind back to when he was probably doing some killings, as what we just kind of imagined in our own scenario here. But he was probably observing Batman, as he said, this masked vigilante during year one, coming after him, and he saw how ahead of the curve maybe he was sometimes, up until a point of where it might have surprised him once or twice when he was doing his killings, because beforehand, the GCPD have clearly never caught him with whatever effed up crap he's done before. So him saying, oh really, like in terms of theories,
you're normally so ahead of the curve.
and giggling about that, he probably liked that the Batman caught him in the first place in those first interactions that he ever had with him when he was finally caught and put away for his own, let's just assume, murder spree. I mean, after all, Batman went to him for killer consultation, so it doesn't take much to put that together. So of course, I would love your own expansion there. Obviously, what I'm saying is not remotely fact for what exactly happened. I think it is very obvious, though, from what Matt Reeves has said. He's a killer. He's had interactions with him before. He got put away by Batman. I do firmly believe that he was getting away with a lot of stuff because of maybe lousy GCPD detective work. Batman was finally the one to be ahead of the curve, which is why he giggled a little bit with what I just said. And, you know, you can just only imagine in your head the kind of, like, moments Joker might have had, close run-ins and a few surprises, not expecting and possibly underestimating this Batman, you know, as he did mess up and get put away by him. I would love to know your own expansion upon that possible very origin that could have actually got him locked away. I don't know, as I said, if we'll ever actually learn it. I do think it's kind of unnecessary. As much as I would low-key, like, love to peel back that spoiler curtain, I also wouldn't remotely mind not knowing exactly what it was, other than just the brief teases of killings. Now, before we get into some of the extra dialogue as things unfold a little bit later, I still kind of want to go through it a little bit more in order. Let's talk about a bit of the cosmetics that we see, his appearance, because I'm still quite adamant about one thing with what Matt Reeves has said, and, you know, there's all kinds of theories with the heavy disfigurement that he has, with people saying maybe burns and things like that. So I still maintain that this isn't chemical burns, like personally in my opinion, and just based on what Matt Reeves has said, I do not think that there are chemical burns. Some people, and fair enough to them, are pointing out that I might be going too much with the whole congenital disease quote that Matt Reeves said and just running with it, but I really don't think so. And that's because, you know, not only what Matt Reeves said, you can honestly, not that I'm an expert in this field, but you can, you know, do some light research yourself, and that is that congenital diseases, or those that are these congenital, you know, and that means just in case anyone doesn't know, I'm not trying to be patronizing here, just from birth, you are born with some kind of disfigurement. You can get congenital diseases that not only disfigure you, that some people get surgery for, but again, you can get congenital disfigurement diseases that can't even really be surgically corrected, so to speak, because of the it might just be such disfigurement that it is practically too hard to kind of reconstruct or whatever, right? I'm not a doctor, but there are some very, very, very severe and extremely, exceptionally rare congenital disfigurements out there. Like I'm sure at least someone has seen something of what I'm talking about here. And so that's why I really dig with what Matt Reeves has said here, and I'll read out something in a second, and how it's kind of like a believable yet grounded, as he says, not to say that this world won't be fantastical as well, and without getting into that whole debate, what's even more believable for me on top of what I was just discussing there is that the congenital disease not only caused him this disfigurement, as you see in a deleted scene, but in how it can also likely cause some other consistent skin issues. That is, yet again, and that sometimes people have such extremely rare congenital diseases or like skin issues that they have to deal with it on a daily basis that are extremely unpleasant to have to, like, you know, live your life with. So just imagine, for lack of a better term, the Joker being born with the shittiest luck. Not only does he have a congenital facial disfigurement, but also it kind of allows for this extremely irritable skin. I'm not saying that is the case for a fact, because Matt Reeves didn't specifically say he's also got a skin condition, but I'm just guessing that the fact that he said congenital disease not only meant disfigurement, but also perhaps, you know, the fact that we see on his hands, he's almost got these boil-like things here, and I don't think they're just most recent burns. I think that's a part of his congenital disease. His face, and now you can see what's going on there, to his little pimple, even there on his lip. It's just, you know, again, the key word here is congenital, from birth. I don't think he had that from birth, and as some people were theorizing about, oh, he also fell in some chemicals or whatever at the same time. Again, I think from the disfigurement on his face to the boils, if you will, on his hands and other little bits of areas that he probably, you know, picks at himself as some sort of self-inflicted damage, which again falls under potentially the irritation issues he has with this congenital disease. It just all falls under the same territory, including the green hair. That isn't like this luminousy green, bright green. And what I like with what they did here is that it is green, but it's more of like a mousy green. I'm not saying that makes it like mousy brown hair, blondie hair color. I'm just saying it's got like a nice hue there that I'm not saying it's realistic, but you could say such a rare congenital disease, right? That the Joker, unfortunately, was born, everyone's born innocent, right? Was born like this, and his hair color happened to be a certain hue of rare color that, again, the world just looked at him in a certain way with, and it kind of, you know, to other people makes him look like a monster, even though he wasn't inherently born a monster. And as a result, he had a dark reaction to it, because as Reeves said, you know, and I quote here, life has been a cruel joke on him, and he's had to spend a life of people looking at him in a certain way. And as he said as well, we went on to say he had a dark reaction to that and had this kind of nihilistic viewpoint and sense or outlook on life. But then, yeah, he kind of also became a killer. But just for those who want to hear this quote, and I'll read it fairly quickly, this is specifically what Reeves has said about this design of the Joker. I wanted to create an iteration of him that felt distinctive and new, but went right back to the roots. So he's kind of very much out of the Conrad Veidt sort of mold. And that idea of the silent film of the man who laughs. He's got this congenital disease. He can never stop smiling, and I was like, well, maybe there's something here where it's not something, and this is important here, it's not something where he fell in a vat of chemicals, or it's not the Nolan thing where he has these scars and we don't know where they came from. That's what I mean. He also is even compared it in this other bullet point I noted down here, compares him to that of the Phantom of the Opera, and the Phantom of the Opera's disfigurement, the congenital disease, he says, is horrific. So I think that does say it all. I get how those scars, people are thinking, those are clearly burns, and I'm not saying that every ounce of damage on him, the little lines and stuff, is as a result of interactions he's had with people, maybe even Batman, I don't know, like knife marks or whatever. But I do believe practically everything you're looking at on the face, any kind of scarring you see there is maybe him reopening his wound or something like that, or as a result of the disfigurement, skin irritation due to congenital disease, but also even the back of the hair. He could have had such severe, just like as you see the fresh things that appear on his hands, the boil-like moments, they could have appeared on his head. It could be something that intermittently pops up throughout his day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, yearly life, where sometimes he leaves the boils like they're alone, maybe he's had that on his hair before, and because he's itched it, it's scarred over, and as you know, if you have scarring on your scalp, it's very hard for hair to puncture through that, so that's why he's got missing chunks. So again, I know I've doubled down on this quite a lot here, but I just wanted to make it firmly clear as to why I feel like every, or practically 98% of this Joker look is down to a congenital disease. Now, with continuing the dialogue, I want to kind of call this part the intelligence of the Joker, if you will, and how Matt Reeves, in such a short scene, manages to, as I keep saying, bring out the multifaceted aspects to the goofy, the serious, the perverse, the kind of brilliant mind in how he knows how to attack yours and somewhat worm his way in there to a point of, before you even realize it, he's already in there, so you can only react, if you know what I mean. So here, it's very quickly in how the Joker already knows that of the mind of the Riddler. And this speaks larger to why this scene was cut out with what he says here.
It's violence. It's so baroque, so meticulous. Like he's been planning this his whole life.
Already there, he really did kind of like, this is a profiling. The point of it isn't to be like, this is Edward Nashton. He's this, he's that. It's a very ambiguous overhauling. Okay, what's the guy I'm dealing with? So the violence is so broke, it's so meticulous, like he has been planning this his whole life. And technically you could say that he has had that kind of mindset since he was an orphan, especially if you take into account the loose canonical prequel novel kind of stuff going on there from a very young age. He almost killed people.
I know who he is. Who is he? He's a nobody. Wants to be somebody. The mayor, the commissioner. He's got ambition.
You think his motive is political?
Oh, no. This is very, very personal. He feels these people have all wronged him. Probably goes way back. Unhealed wounds, stolen lunch money.
Then he says he's got ambition. I love that line because the Riddler is a very ambitious character. A lot of Batman's rogues gallery are, but some of the most theatrical, that of Joker and being Riddler. And then, you know, this is very personal. He feels that these people have all wronged him. You know, this probably goes way back, all the way to his orphan days. And he's kind of spot on here with his ambiguous statements. Unhealed wounds, kind of stolen lunch money. That is very spot on Edward Nashton there. Now, one of my favorite parts here is what he says up next. And it's with regards to him calling the Riddler a nobody, but wants to be a somebody.
Who is he?
He's a nobody. Wants to be somebody.
Now, a lot of people are starting to point this out now, and I do love it. You could argue it's reading too into it. It's just two words, you know, said at two different parts of the movie. But if you want to get a bit poetic about it, and I do believe a lot of things in movies most of the time when it comes to this are deliberate choices, not a lot is done by mistake, to be honest with you. So I love how Batman here even takes that line, you know, he's a nobody, from Joker to somewhat say that in the interrogation scene to Riddler later. It's almost like this seed was planted by Joker and Batman in this interrogation scene to say it that much later on in the movie in his interrogation scene with Riddler, you know, where he's like, no, this wasn't how it was supposed to go. In that moment, Batman says, you know, this is all in your head. You're sick, twisted. You think you'll be remembered? You're a pathetic psychopath, begging for attention. You're gonna die alone in Arkham. And then he's like, a nobody, you know, and that is similar to what Joker says here. He's a nobody wanting to be a somebody. So just, you know, when you watch that scene again, with this context now, having seen this scene, when Batman says that stuff, you know, he leaves a bit of space in between each word. You know, he's just like, you're a pathetic psychopath, begging for attention. You're gonna die here alone in Arkham. And he's like ferociously says, a nobody.
Who is he?
He's a nobody.
And I don't know, there's just something about that now, having heard Barry Keoghan's Joker say a nobody, and Batman now regurgitating that word later on. It's like, that's pretty cool. Again, you could say this is reading too into it, but, you know, given that this Joker scene was right after Batman got the letter from the Riddler from the rat litter tray, after Pete Savage's body was being looked at by Jim and Batman in that moment, it's cool to think that much later in the movie and where he's got that interrogation scene with Riddler, that Joker calling Riddler a nobody who wants to be a somebody, somewhat kind of stuck with Batman, and it's weird that in a way that he even used it to equip it himself as an insult to the Riddler, but it might not have even been his own idea. But then again, you could say, hey, no, if you're gonna want to kind of put down a serial killer who wants to be remembered begging for attention, one of the things you can say to get under their skin is saying that they're a nobody, that what they didn't do anything in history, if you know what I mean. So you could look at it just that way as well. I would say at this point of the conversation between Joker and Batman is where it somewhat ends in terms of advice. There's a little bit added on there as we near the end, but it's kind of like that's not Joker's agenda now. That's not what he's trying to do in this moment, because this is truly the turning point of that conversation, and where he stopped looking at the Riddler and now just turns it onto a playful mind game back on Batman. Says, hey, if I've got you here, Batman, I'm gonna do what I kind of do normally in the source material. And as soon as Batman says, then why is he writing to me? That's when Joker says as follows.
Why is he writing to me?
Maybe he's a fan of yours? Or maybe he's got a grudge against you, too. Maybe you're the main course. You're normally so ahead of the curve. But something is different this time. This is very upsetting to you.
Let's get back to him.
Why? You're so much more fun.
I'm not here to talk about me.
And again, this is still all about Batman, whilst on the surface he's still somewhat commenting about the Riddler, because he's no longer psychoanalyzing the serial killer, he's psychoanalyzing Batman in this moment, because as Joker says, you are so much more fun. And as he says as well, something is different this time. This is very upsetting to you. And the way I kind of liken this to, like, when Batman's like, you know, let's get back to him, you know, not about me, and with how Joker's like, yeah, but you're so much more fun, it's kind of like, you know, somebody with a bit of attention deficit, ADD, if you will. Their attention span will wander with anything that they're not truly really invested in. They can be hyper focused on certain things, but with other things it's kind of like, you know, if something goes off, it's like, oh, okay. And with Joker here, yeah, for some time he was psychoanalyzing the serial killer, you know, but as soon as he gets distracted with Batman, he is locked on. And then it's like, okay, no, I want, you're so much more fun, you know, oh, you know, let's talk about you. Batman tries to turn around that conversation, but Joker, again, is just fixated on him. And from there on out, it doesn't really stop.
I'm not here to talk about me.
What are you here to talk about?
I want to know how he thinks.
You know exactly how he thinks. Have you read this file? You two have so much in common. Masked Avengers. So he's even more righteous. Oh, you afraid he makes you look soft?
So the whole, you two have so much in common, masked Avengers. But this is all not necessarily the same advice he was giving at the beginning of the Arkham interview. All while it's presented as more information, which it kind of is, it's also to get his hooks into Batman that much more with these very lines. Because think about it, he knows he's getting Batman pissed, making those comparisons in the latter of that serial killer advice, quite literally comparing them, saying you two have so much in common, all while delivering the goofy side too. Batman is not only more fun to him to psychoanalyze than, like, you know, the serial killer in the paper files, but also to completely F with him. And then there's the cherry on the freaking cake, like the absolute cherry on the cake for Joker, because Joker knows that Batman knows that deep down, Riddler might be right in that those corrupt targets can be seen in a certain point of view, you know, deserving of what fate they met through the hands of the Riddler. And with those very scenes of how it's like this momentum building with Joker getting more and more happy with how he's got not only the hooks in Batman, but the more he's saying what he's saying, the more right it feels, because he can tell, even psychoanalytically, with what he's doing, psychoanalyzing the Batman in this moment, that he might be on the kind of right ball. And then as a result, the laughter just grows more. The Joker feels like he hit the nail on the head there. Or at least, at the very minimum, has made Batman question himself or think about what he said, where he's just like, maybe, wait, do I kind of actually feel like, despite I'm going after this serial killer, like, do I actually kind of feel like he might be right in a way, because Batman does have these, you know, somewhat darker impulses, a darker version of himself, as we've seen in alternate stories, Elseworld stories, or whatever. Batman has a no-kill rule, because if you cross that line, sometimes it can be argued that he could be the worst of his own rogues gallery. I'm not saying Batman's always on the edge of darkness, you know, and he's like, oh, one step away, I could be the worst of all evils, but you get what I'm trying to say here in the subtext of Batman. He can be a dark character. Trauma has forged different villains to go down different paths. It forged Batman to be a good vigilante, but he's a very dark character, which is why I wouldn't be surprised just like with what we're getting into now, and how Batman would never quite outright come out and say this, nor admit it, but deep down, he probably does feel like, as he says in the movie, to Selina with her friend, you know, and what happened to her. Actions have consequences when she was hanging out with the wrong crowd. Or with regards to Jim and the Pete Savage scene where they went and saw his body. Jim was just like, you make it sound like he had it coming. It's like Batman would almost question, and Joker's reading in on this, that, hey, maybe these people had it coming, and maybe deep down, as he's teasing him in these lines of this moment, you think he's right. It's that taunting. And I love this. Joker knows his Batman. And this is just the beginning. Think about it. Like, this is just the infancy of it. And already, like, he's getting his hooks in. And it could only make you think when he actually got hands-on with him in year one, and maybe what those dialogue interactions were like. But also in how, you know, I could ramble on and on about how well Pattinson did in this performance. It's subtle, but he's tolerating him the whole time. Almost looking at him with disgust, but almost maybe a bit of pity as well, but also it keeps getting overtaken with that disgust. But yeah, guys, just this simple ability that Barry Keoghan's Joker in particular here, and every Joker has this, but they were capitalizing upon it in this film, like even with the Riddler scene, as I mentioned, but this scene, his ability to get underneath Batman's skin by tuning into Batman's slightly darker side just makes him laugh more and more maniacally, and when he knows he's hit that nail on the head, it's more provocative in his maniacal laughter, because he knows he's got him right there, just as Batman refuses to look at him and he's just exiting the Arkham interview room. And as Reeves said from this very line, from this larger quote, is that so this idea of him being very kind of incisive and brilliant and being able to get into your mind and basically having this kind of nihilistic point of view that's sort of like from his inception, from his birth, life has been a cruel joke on him, and this is his response, and he's eventually going to declare himself as a clown, declare him as the Joker.
You're wasting my time.
I'll tell you what I really think. I think you don't really care about his motives, whether he loves or hates you. I think somewhere deep down, you're just terrified. Because you're not sure he's wrong, huh? You think they deserved it, huh? You think they deserved it.
Okay, so paperclip theory. Now, some of you may be wondering, like, Like, what do you mean paperclip? So, essentially, a lot of people are pointing out that Joker may have taken one of the paperclips from the file, and as a result, you know, maybe he could break out of Arkham Asylum or State Hospital's awful security, maybe kill someone with a paperclip, who knows? Obviously, this would mean that Batman in year 2, still in his kind of rookie-esque days, allowed a paperclip to be taken. There was multiple paperclips on the file, as you can see. But here, specifically, when you see Batman puts the files in the little transfer box, you can clearly see when the file is upside down to Batman's perspective, there's a paperclip by the little yellow checkpoint marker on the file attached to the paper on the front of the file. Now, when it's returned, and now you could say this is because Batman just yanks it out quickly out of the box, maybe it fell in there. There's honestly a few explanations for this. Either way, when he takes it out, if he frees it in this frame that you're seeing on screen, the paperclip is gone. And now, as a result, obviously people are theorizing that amongst all of that chatter, eye-to-eye conversation, Joker, when he maybe slammed it shut, took a paperclip and just kind of kept it. Who knows, kept the others on there. And I love this, by the way. Like, Joker could have took it. But I do want to play devil's advocate and just offer the alternative just to entertain all sides, in that you can also see that the highlighter yellow marker piece of paper for the file is gone too, in where it was right next to the paperclip. So as a result, it could just be a continuity error, unless, you know, Joker took that little yellow piece of paper as well as the paperclip, attaching that piece onto the very front of the file with the little Riddler question mark there. Or the third option, as I said, that piece of paper comes off as well as the paperclip when Batman kind of yanks it out of the little box. But given that we know Mr. J is going to get out one day, as Reeves says himself, he's not yet the guy that we come to know, he's going to get out again. He's getting out. How will he get out? He's not going to be let out, I think that's obvious, so he's gonna escape. And as Barry Keoghan's Joker says, Gotham loves a comeback story. This could also, if you do want to fully fledged believe in that Paperclip going missing is as a result of Joker taking it, contribute to the Arkham Asylum series that we're getting. Don't forget, we're no longer getting that GCPD series, we are getting the Penguin show and an Arkham series, which is going to be, as Matt Reeves described it, making that of Arkham like a horror kind of character, like that of what Gotham is a character in the movie. So it could possibly hint, as a result of this Paperclip maybe getting taken, that maybe it might carry on in the freaking series. Who knows there? But I do think that this isn't really going to mean that he's a main villain in the sequel. I mean, you could say in the Arkham series, if it does even follow Barry Keoghan's Joker at all, even if in a minimal way, even if at the very end they showed him getting out somehow, that doesn't necessarily be the direct sequel villain. For example, he could just be licking his wounds behind the scenes the whole time during the sequel movie to maybe pop up in some kind of role in the third movie. Honestly, anything is possible here. I honestly don't know where to land, just because, yes, the Paperclip isn't there anymore, and there's still other Paperclips, but the one that we're talking about is missing. But yet, so is that little yellow kind of sticky kind of reminder paper thing gone as well. So I don't know what to make of it. Do you think that's a deliberate choice? Because again, not many decisions like this are made by mistake in movies, but sometimes it happens. But then again, a Paperclip, putting that in a prisoner room where he could take it and then unravel it, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Now, what's all of this about the secret within the makeup? Because here we have the Pro Ren FX on their Instagram, I believe. It might be their Twitter. But either way, it says Batman, Joker deleted scene, makeup done at Pro Ren FX with key artists, design Mike Marino, Mike Fontaine, Ark Sakamoto. Basically, at the very bottom of this post, after all the hashtags, it says, can anyone spot the secret within his face? Now, people have since found that, and I don't really know how to feel about this. I think it could just be like a bit of a scar. I mean, you could argue as a result of him already seeing outside his Arkham cell. There's a TV there, the security TV, where Riddler was looking out and seeing how Batman was saving people at the end of the movie, and he was getting really pissed. You could argue maybe Joker was a fan that he did this to himself, but there is, and there's no other way about it. You're seeing it on screen. There is a little Easter egg of a question mark there that's done in such a way where it could appear as a scar. Now, this isn't guaranteeing that this is the secret within his face, but at the same time, I don't think this is reading too into it. To me, that is obviously a question mark. Again, in the way of the movie, it might not canonically be Joker, hey, I'm a fan of the Riddler, I'm going to put a question mark on my face, or an actual question mark. It probably is just a scar, but it might just be a little Easter egg there. You could argue, if you want to read even further into it, it's like, who am I? How did I begin? Oh, question mark. But that just gives me Jared Leto damaged vibes. I feel like this, to put the bottom line assumption on it, this isn't out of being a fan of the Riddler or whatever, anything like that. I don't think it's him alluding to his own mystery. I think it is just a scar. But that is maybe the secret within his face. But even then, like, if I'm being really honest here, like, I don't know how I feel about that, because it is quite obviously a scar. Because not only do you have the question mark there, but I think there is even a little dot underneath it. Again, you decide for yourself on screen. Let me know if this isn't even the secret that Pro Ren FX are teasing here. Like, what else is there? Like, can anyone spot the secret within his face? Surely it's got to be that, right? I mean, Riddler's movie, he's the villain. Some kind of scratch, scar, maybe that he did himself or whatever, because as we mentioned earlier, I feel like, arguably it could be done by a knife or something, but I feel like a lot of this is his own skin irritation or whatever. But to have a question mark kind of damage there, I don't know, it kind of feels a bit like the secret, but again, might be something else. Maybe there's something else that I'm missing here. The secret within his face. But let me know, either way, if you think it is, the question mark, and what do you think of that? And lastly, guys, I kind of addressed this yesterday with regards to, like, why it was removed, but just to kind of go over it again, because I've noticed as much, you know, as much as I've enjoyed the scene, and, you know, in a way, I kind of would love it in the movie, I've seen a lot of comments from people saying in yesterday's reaction and breakdown, why would they cut it? Why would they do that? Damn, like, you know, this would be so cool in the movie. And I get it, but it really is just more or less because with this very scene that we have here, this deleted scene, it does kind of give away a lot of the subtext, if you will, of what the movie was striving to tell as, you know, we went throughout more and more of the movie's runtime. And just in general, what it goes after with trying to reveal and question what's going on with Bruce and Riddler and the whole vengeance comparison, even their own interrogation scene later on. Like, arguably the dialogue in this very scene kind of gives away a lot of, like, those answers you get later on in the film. Not that I'm saying those answers were complete mind-blowing answers, especially if you paid a bit of attention to the movie anyway. But again, this scene was happening after he got the letter at the rat's litter tray after they looked at Pete Savage's body. So that is quite early on to be getting all of these, like, oh, you and him are very, you know, much so the same. And then for, like, later on, after let's just say the scene was included, for Riddler to say all those things in the interrogation scene where, like, it looks up to the Batman. He's a fan of his. He was adoring his mask. I wish you saw me and mine. And, like, clearly he's trying to live up to what the Batman does, but arguably in his own way, do it in a more effective way by killing people. All of that was kind of given away in this scene. Like, maybe he's a fan of yours. He or maybe, you know, all of those lines. So, I mean, I get what they were going for with this scene. It is really cool. But overall, like, if you're looking at cutting a movie, it definitely does kind of somewhat undermine what I've just said later on in the movie, all of those little bits and pieces that we learn otherwise. And it just wouldn't have nearly had that same effect if we had this scene in the movie, despite how freaking awesome at the same time it is. So everyone, another long rambly video, but you know I had to dive into this in as much detail as I could. A 5-minute scene. When we got this deleted scene and we heard about it from Reeves and how he would be releasing it, I didn't think it would be 5 minutes long. So that is a huge treat. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would really appreciate it if you left a like on it, shared this with your friends, maybe on Twitter or any kind of social media, and just leave a comment. And maybe if you got this far on a video, leave a hashtag with whatever comment you were going to put in the comment section anyway. To prove that you got this far, hashtag you're so much more fun. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, all those good links down in the description, along with my Discord server if you feel like joining and talking about this with me and many others in this community on this channel. But yeah, just thank you so much for watching. Hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you freaking Bat family in the next video. Goodbye.